Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 675 of Longbox Heroes, the Lamborghini of comic book podcasts. Joe and Todd here. Todd, hello. How are you?
I'm doing great. 675. If we were a lesser podcast, we would try to make this an anniversary episode somehow, but that's not our style.
No, definitely not. And we'll be hitting 700 soon enough, right?
Yeah. Big
and I'm gonna pop open my NyQuil here to see what's gonna race quicker, the effects of this NyQuil or how short of a show this is gonna be.
Super short show, I think.
Well, for the first time in a long time, we actually have news, and we actually have a bunch of news, right?
Mm-hmm.
A independent comic company is attempting something different with the launch of their new book. What is going on with Fables over at DC? And a legitimate icon, legend, nay, I say both, is going to be getting an artist's edition coming up here in the near future from IDW.
Well deserved, but
more than well deserved. We have conventions this weekend, of course. We have what we read last week, which would be Peacemaker Tries Hard #5 and Fire and Ice Welcome to Smallville #1. What we're looking forward to coming out this week, the return of Todd's Art Attack, a touch to see how week 1 shook out for the soon-to-be-named network ESPN Pigskin Pick'ems. Todd and Joe have issues as we're getting to the very end of the kindly ones in Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and of course the latest episode of Ahsoka on Disney Plus with lots and lots of notes.
Yes,
on all of this.
I'm glad one of us has notes on Ahsoka. Anyway,
yes. Well, we'll get into it. It's going to be more notes up front than the actual show itself, but.
Mm-hmm.
So this was actually something that was mentioned to me at the comic book shop when I went to go pick up my books this past Wednesday. And I want to give a shout out here. Whether you're in the Patreon or not, I think that's how you get in there. But we do have a soon-to-be-named network, Discord. There's a Longbox Heroes channel. And I wanted to give a shout out to a lot of the listeners that shoot us some information about the news of stuff that's coming out. Sometimes when the news cycle is dry, it's dry, and sometimes when it's cycling, it's churning, and stuff could get, out of your purview. But we got a lot of very diligent listeners that are on top of that sort of thing. We got folks that are direct messaging me stuff so that we don't miss out on stuff. And I like to cover the comic end of news stuff,
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, so Vault comic, up and coming, trying to make some moves. They have a new book coming out next month from Chris Yost, who did a bunch of fill-in stuff at Marvel. He did a bunch of writing for TV and whatnot. And artist Val Rodriguez have a new book coming out called Unnatural Order. Now, this book has a current order number of almost 140,000. Now, the reason for this is they have 120,000-ish copies that are being earmarked for issue 1 to be given away by retailers for free.
Right.
The other 20,000 are variant covers, priced relatively $5, $15, $20 sort of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is an interesting strategy it's one thing to give away your digital comic for free as a first issue to try to get people in. Yep. It's another thing to get the physical copy of something in retailers' hands to give out for free.
Definitely. Especially 120,000 copies with the price of printing today,
Exactly. They're taking a huge calculated risk, which kind of shows that they have confidence in the material, the property, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll definitely be interesting to see what shakes out and how this shakes out. I'll be getting a copy of it, right?
I'm going to see if I can get my hands on a copy, too.
Now, it was a book that was delayed. It was originally supposed to come out in July. They moved it to October. And it's a spooky book, so, trying to get something like that on the shelves for Halloween, I think, makes a lot of sense. And, I don't know, check your local retailer. Let them know that you want a copy of this.
Yeah. I agree. Like I said, you said it best. My only thought of my brain went, they really have confidence in their product. Really, really have confidence. So
absolutely.
Good. And I wish them all the best.
Yep. And look, and that's the thing. And, they have the confidence. They think the issue is going to be good. You pick that up, you're going to pay for the second issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Give you that first taste free, Joe.
Mm-hmm. So we had mentioned, of course, about a new artist edition that's coming from IDW. And IDW has a weird deal where they're allowed to print, like, old Marvel and DC stuff.
Yep.
Without it really being, they don't have the rights to this sort of stuff, but they do, stuff through an artist,
Right.
I know, like, there's a Neil Adams and David Mazzucchelli's Batman Year One is getting an artist edition.
Right.
Now, the subject of what the artist edition is, we don't know just yet, but it is the artist in question is Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
Right.
So again, whatever is going to be picked as his seminal work, that's going to get the artist edition. And what that is, it's kind of like an oversized sort of thing, where it was kind of how everything was drawn up originally, like facsimiles of those original pages that they would do.
The best way to describe it is what they try to do is get their hands on all the original artwork for whatever they're doing. Because, like, basically, let's say they did a Walt Simonson Manhunter one.
Yeah.
And I believe Walt Simonson's a dude who doesn't sell any of his artwork. So it was real easy. They just scan all the original artwork. And, back then it had the word balloons on it. And you put it up. So you're not putting out a comic. You're showing, like, the whole issue or whatever you can with scans of the art. So a lot of these guys who do the artist editions, they're always like, hey, like on a site that I use, Comic Art Fans or whatever, if you have any pages from so-and-so, let us know. And Jose is a guy who, like, I've talked to, and I know he has a lot of his original artwork still around. He's sold a lot of stuff over the years. But I'm hoping the nuts and bolts of it are going to be those DC reference guides.
Yes, the reference guides, the style guides.
Yep, the style guides, because he was the king of that. And I still don't know why they haven't reprinted that style guide, because they go for hundreds and like you would get them back in the day from the company if you worked for them, and they go for hundreds, if not like thousands of dollars, because they had like a binder and everything. People want them. People will buy it. Jose is somebody who is, like we said, have done a billion things for the promotional art and package art and everything. He doesn't have a super long length of stuff interiors, you know what I mean? Like, you'd be shocked at how little he's done for how prestigious he is. But I'm hoping, like I said, this will be whatever it is. I'll probably pick it up. So
yeah, and these artist editions usually run like $150, give or take. And we've mentioned Jose's work before. We mentioned here the style guides, the reference guides, and whatever. If you buy, even to this day, any sort of DC merchandise, like mass marketed merchandise, where it's the quote unquote classic looks of the characters, let's say a pre-crisis era, pre-modern era of the DC characters, it is invariably a Jose Luis Garcia Lopez design or somebody aping his design.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a man who has manned his table once or twice, Joe, I'm not dropping any, names or anything, but like I said, I really hope, that they do more of this stuff and the guy gets all the credit that he deserves,
Yeah, absolutely. And now, I guess, last but not least, I kind of moved this on the schedule, of course, only because, and we'll get into this.
Right. So,
I very much enjoyed Bill Willingham's Fables from DC Vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it overstayed its welcome past issue 100, getting it to issue 150, but in a time when Vertigo was looking for their next big thing, this was it.
Right.
And Mark Buckingham is someone who is and has been around the comic book industry for quite some time. You know, when we do Previewing the Past, we talk about and have been talking about his Elementals for, you know, several years. It's always popping up there, right?
Right. And we're always talking about Miracle Man 25.
Right. And that's finally come out.
Yeah.
So this was Fables was getting a redo. It was getting a 12-issue kind of revival. They got a launch with Bill Willingham and Mark Buckingham doing a Bigby, who's, you know, the big bad wolf, Batman crossover, kind of to help promote, like, hey, Fables is coming back. Let's do like a miniseries with Batman. Batman sells, right?
Right.
So that comes out, and then the first like 3 or 4 issues of Fables comes out, and then this is a book that is perennially late. It's, you know, consistent. I don't think there's been an issue that's come out in quite some time. And from the time that these issues get solicited to the time that they come out is typically like 3 to 4 months behind.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously people were raising questions about this, concern or so forth. And just recently, Bill Willingham took to Twitter and said, quote, in answer to far too many requests, I'm tempted to explain the delays and issues of Fables, since DC has refused to do so. Short version, I handed in every script more than 2 years ago, and for multiple reasons, haven't worked with DC/for DC since. I fired them.
Wow.
Okay. That was this afternoon prior to we were recording.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're getting ready, I'm opening up all my hot links, you know, getting everything ready. And I always like to double check some things to get some context, to see what's going on in the world of comics, to see if any sort of new news has come across the wire, to see if anyone's misbehaving or anything else like that. So then I see that there's another Bill Willingham tweet that's less than an hour old as of we're discussing this.
Mm-hmm.
On the Ides of September, the 15th, a press release is going out to as many venues as I could reach, explaining what's going on with Fables. Hint, it's not what you think. Second note, please note that many of my favorite comic news sites won't receive this press release because you make it hard to near impossible to contact you. And yet, I suspect this is something you'll want to see, even if you decide not to carry the story.
Right.
So I tweeted at Bill Willingham and said, I'm about to go live on my podcast, and we're going to cover this. I'll take a scoop. And he hasn't replied.
Of course not. He doesn't, you know, he's afraid of the range that we have, but no.
Todd, I have a feeling this one might be messy.
Joe, I think in the first tweet, it was already messy. When he fired one of the 2 major comic companies, Joe, it wasn't going to be, you know, amicable. And let's see where it goes from here. I have a feeling we'll be having a follow-up on next week's show.
I have a feeling that we absolutely will be.
Right. If it doesn't go live by the end of this show.
Listen, I'm not hitting refresh, but I got my eyes on it. There might be an update to the update at the end of this episode. Yes.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So that's news from this past week, a little bit more than we've had in the past. Got conventions this weekend.
Right.
We got an actual straight up comic book convention, the Granite State Comic Con in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Oh, I thought you were going to say England.
No. Craig Rousseau is going to be there. Freddie Williams II is going to be there, of Red Letter Media fame. And he's actually done like a bunch of art on a bunch of stuff too. And Sean Gordon Murphy is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
From the world of entertainment, Anson Williams and Donnie Most are going to be there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a get, man.
That's a Mark photo that I would think about.
Do you think he still hates being called Potsy?
Well, I do know that on the site they have him listed as Donald Most.
No, Anson wasn't Anson.
No,
Williams?
but I'm just saying that I think they're trying to shed that. But if you're going to be at a convention where you're paired up with Ralph Malph, I think you've embraced being called Potsy.
Right. And that's it. There's nobody else at Granite, right?
Well, from the world of sports and entertainment,
yes.
Big Papa Pump himself, Scott Steiner, is going to be there.
Right.
And one half of the AEW six-man tag team champions, Billy Gunn. Again, this is the clean show, so again, I'm not even going to tiptoe around what they call him on the show these days.
I was wondering what you were going to do.
Mm-hmm. Which leads me to believe that maybe the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn are not going to be colliding this weekend.
Lots of stuff I don't understand because my social media walls are holding.
That's right. But, of course, we also have the Edmonton Expo, which is under the Fan Expo umbrella. You all know the joke about there's only one that keeps them all afloat and all the other ones stink.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm looking at this lineup. There's no home run. Like, there's no, like, A+++, in the business for 40-plus years creator.
Right.
But you got Zeb Wells, you got Steve McNiven, you got Yannick Paquette, Tony Harris, Tom Grummett, Jeremy Adams, our new friend who writes Green Lantern and Avengers, Carrie Nord on the comic book side. Media guest side, you got people like Carl Weathers, Jason Lee, Stephen Amell. So, that's a pretty stacked show.
Yeah. Somebody go ask Amell how he feels about the strike today.
He might strike you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's right. With an arrow or something.
Wow.
Yeah. So, hey, we got links to all that stuff in the show notes that accompany this episode, along with information about the soon-to-be-named network at soon-to-be-named-network.com, soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. Anytime any of the shows go live, you can find them, of course, on your podcatcher of choice. You could find them on their own individual sites, but you could also find them at soon-to-be-named-network.com. And anytime anyone from the shows on the Soon-to-be-named network go on some other show and they let me know, we could go ahead and put it up on the website as well, so you won't miss out on your favorite soon-to-be-named network personalities popping up all over the place. And those shows, of course, include this show that you're listening to right now, Longbox Heroes, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Final Wrestling Place, At Odds with Wrestling, We Need Wrestling, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Argument, Wings on Wings, Hiya Bussy, and I'm checking my watch. The football season started, and I haven't seen a new episode of our boutique series, No Chance in Helmet, yet.
I'll say, I think Marcus was too excited to do it. He had too much energy. I think he took too many certain things that were the next logical step.
Oh, I don't have that loaded on my soundboard.
You don't have to. People will understand. But we'll see. Who knows? I don't know. It fell through the cracks. I think fantasy took precedence.
Oh, okay. I can go one way, but I'm going to go another way. And Marcus don't listen to this show, but he'll still appreciate me saying he's been drinking too many energy drinks and running too hard.
Okay.
But like I said, anytime any of the shows go live, you can go find them over at soon-to-be-named-network.com. You can also check out our friends who are doing stuff in and around the internets themselves. You can go check out West Coast retailer extraordinaire Mike Sterling's blog at progressiveruin.com. You can go check out our friend Kevin's blog at maskedlibrary.com. You can go check out Rick Williams, the Chop Shop, at freekaratechops.storeenvy.com. He's got some, I'm not going to say new, but it looks like new-ish stuff up there. A lot of stuff is selling out. So I hope some of the plugs that we're doing here, a lot of, wrestling, sci-fi, inspired stuff, kind of like the old muscle figures, a lot of that sort of stuff. He's got stickers. He's got all sorts of really cool stuff there. You can go check out Jason Sandberg's Jupiter, still up at the Indiegogo. Still creeping ever so close to that $9,000 mark. I know Jason is still out there beating feet, promoting as much as he can, just as much as we're attempting to help him here. You can go check out Chris Runt's self-published comic over at his website for his podcast, fortressofcomicsnews.com, and that would be Battle Monsters. Go check out our friend Dave, who I think is in the process of doing some home remodeling, maybe, of of the band Cave People and artist Rosovia, their self-published comic that you can get at keepercomic.bigcartel.com.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do not have a comic book shop in your area, or you do not have a good comic book shop in your area, let our comic book shop be your comic book shop. Comics on the Green. I got the Facebook page linked up. That's where Dave and the crew do most of their social media-ing. You can find out when the new books are in, because books come in on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I had a whole dust-up in regards to the multiple places that you have to go find where books are coming out online these days at the shop this past week. Don't be like me. Just follow Comics on the Green and you know when everything is coming out. Go sign up for their mail order subscription service. Get stuff mailed to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And if you do, there's a chance you can get a sketch on the package from our good friend Becky. You can go check out her social media, which I also have linked up, so you can see her commissions, her process, her prints, and everything that she's up to.
Yes.
So that's all the plugs and the links and the show notes. Todd, let's get into what we read from this past week. Where would you like to begin?
I want to start with the book I was looking forward to most, which is Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville, written by Joanne Starr, art by Natasha Bustos. I'm hoping I said that correctly. Spinning out of that Power Girl one-shot, they kind of, Fire and Ice, were not doing things correctly when they were trying to help. So Superman kind of told them, hey, why don't you go to Smallville and kind of set up shop there? I'll give you a place to live with like Ma Kent and everything. So this is there, and it kind of starts in the future with things going horribly wrong, and then a flashback where we get the origins of both Fire and Ice on the first page. And somebody said it, I forget who it was, and I'd like to give him credit, that I like that it's the old Ice origin and stuff like that. So that's kind of fun. They end up leasing the Big T's, which was a salon. So they kind of move in there. That's where their headquarters is going to be.
I didn't mean to interrupt. They specifically call it formerly a beauty emporium.
Right. So we also find out that the person helping them, teased in the one shot, is Elrond. So right there, Joe. Before I go any further, this book is got the Todd nod because it has Elrond. And then when you find Elrond is completely enamored because he's in Kansas, in that America kind of town, that he's just fixated on apple pie. I was cracking up. So they're setting up like a headquarters to do good, and they have their bit of all like the files that they have that people aren't looking in on, and just it's JLI character, like JLI level villains that you would absolutely like believe would be of their ilk. We get the new supporting characters. Like one person says, hey, if you got this place and it's a beauty emporium, I used to work here. Why don't you hire me? And you can kind of, make some extra cash. And then Fire ends up not liking what's going on. So she ends up putting out a video that's like basically bring it on. I'm going to take all comers. And basically by this point, I feel like Fire's heavily taking from the Booster Gold camp, if you get my meaning. But there's definitely something up with her that doesn't feel right. We get a cameo by Superman, which is kind of cool. And in the end, things go wrong firefighting with King Shark, who's always fantastic when they show up. And she's like, this didn't work out, so I'm going to call in a ringer. And the person who answers the ringer, I'm absolutely a fan of, so I want to see where this goes. And I think the cameo at the end that's leading in the next issue is like a Jimmy Pistol, like, perfect character. And since this character's popped up a little bit, I'm hoping they're getting the push. So I had fun with this. It tickled everything that I wanted for like a JLI book. It was fun, goofy, not too serious. There's some like hidden thing going on. I like this a lot. It just gave me a warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feeling for me.
Yeah, and listen, I read Joanne's previous book that she did for Ahoy. The gimmick, it was wrestling inspired. I know Joanne has had a foot in that world. We don't know each other, but we know each other. I really like this book. This book definitely feels like someone who grew up reading and loving the Giffen DeMatteis era JLI.
Yes, a love letter to that
yes.
series.
The stuff that I like the most about this, there's one nitpick that I have, and I'm sure Todd knows what it is, but we'll get there. Mm-hmm. The fact that in such a single issue, Joanne does so much world building of this little corner of the DC universe, this little corner of Smallville, like this literal street, this little beauty shop, this beauty emporium, whatever it's going to be, right?
Right.
We're introduced to like 2 or 3 new characters. We get Tamarind, who used to work at the beauty shop, the Rocky, the waitress. We get lore that people in Smallville are notoriously bad tippers. Mm-hmm. We get a bunch of like knockoff, newly created or never, like probably like one-off villains from like 30, 40 years ago that have never come back up. That are all of the different cases that Fire is trying to like. Nobody's looking into Lot's wife, right?
Right. And I feel these are all new characters, but I don't know.
Right, and that's the thing. Whether they're new characters or they're characters that haven't been touched in 20, 30, 40 years, they're new then, right? Mm-hmm. I think one of the other strongest things is, so first of all, the art is beautiful, right? I really like the art in it. It's very, and again, it's not, I don't want to say that it's soft, but it's definitely very much for the tone of the book.
Yes, and I think soft defines the colors more than the...
Yes, there you go. It's a lighter tone, it's a softer tone with the color palette that's being used, and that's how this book should be. But Joanne does a great job of getting Elrond's voice as well.
Definitely.
And that could be something that's tough to get, and she does a great job with that. Todd teased the last page reveal. I had that spoiled on me before I read the issue.
Oh!
But it still didn't matter, because as soon as I saw it happen, I'm just like, oh, this is the sort of book we're getting, right?
Joe, when I got it, I may have leaped up and did like the jump in the air, and then I freeze framed and held there for a minute.
So, I would also, so if I have a nitpick, Todd, this is my nitpick.
Is it Elrond modeling something?
No.
Oh.
So Fire goes into business for herself and films a video where she challenges people, which is what draws King Shark, and Superman has to step in and everything else like that. And again, I'm gonna it's gonna be like a nitpick sandwich, if you will, because I'm gonna say where she puts the video, Fire puts the video out on all the different social medias in the DC universe.
Oh, I got to add those to the list if I can find my old list.
You know, like Wayne Book, Pixtagram, My Place. But we ended around in a bit where Fire puts all the stuff up there. Ice and Superman, specifically Superman, finds out about it. And then Fire does a bit where she talks to Tamarind, who's younger, like she's in her early 20s. And she's like, the next video we're putting up on the social media that you use, because there's no way that Superman uses the one that the kids are using.
Right.
So, like, there's great bits like that. It was really a fun book. I highly recommend it. It's the closest that we get to something I said at the beginning, what I discussed. The closest that we get to something that sounds and feels like a JLI Giffen DeMatteis era book without being them, you know? I
was worried you were going to go off on the bit where the one young lady, I forget the new character who's the hairstylist.
Tamarind.
Tamarind is practicing her wares by putting a wig on Elrond.
That's okay.
Combing it out. I know how you are about bad wigs and Elrond, and I was just kidding. I was like, I wonder if this is going to come up. But
I watched Back to the Future with my kid this weekend,
right.
And oh boy, the wig work in that film does not hold up under high definition 4D whatever.
What? 4K, I think, is the word you're looking for. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. That's a very sketchy storyline anyway. So
So the other book that we read from this past week is Peacemaker Tries Hard #5, written by Kyle Starks, with art by Stephen Pugh. This is sadly, I say sadly, the penultimate issue of the story. I'll start with getting my complaint out of the way.
Right.
About this. I feel this issue moved too fast. Like, the book has moved at a breakneck speed, but I felt as though, especially with the stuff, and it's on the cover, and we know by now what the plot of the storyline is that Peacemaker was sent to get the DNA of Deathstroke so that the brain of Mala and the Brain can clone Deathstroke, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel as though there's, like, gags involving, like, the Deathstroke babies, teenage Deathstroke, and then again, of course, Warmaker, which is the one that, you know, the Brain goes into. No spoilers. But I feel as though, like, all of those things could have breathed on their own.
Right.
I'm not a writer. I'm not an artist. I'm not a creative person by any stretch of the imagination. But maybe it's just because I want more of this book. I feel as though, like, we could have did an issue on the babies, and that could have led to the teenager. And then we get the battle with the teenager, and then the next issue cliffhanger is Warmaker. Like, I'm looking for ways just to extend this book further, I think, is what my issue is.
Right. That's your big complaint, is it's not a 36-issue first arc.
Yeah.
But no, I'm with you. The one that I would not argue about is, and it's on the cover of the main issue, is the Deathstroke baby fight.
Yes.
I really didn't think that was going to fly even in a Black Label book. Like, I can't see Peacemaker punching babies and like, you know, it getting through at DC editorial, even in a Black Label book. But I'm with you. That could have been stretched out longer. But I do think the thing that ends up happening in the end with Brain, like where he ends up, is not what we think, because I think Bruce Wayne maybe hurt Brain a little bit. So I think he may not be the genius we think he used to be, if you get my meaning.
I do.
So, but I love it. The art is amazing. And if this doesn't kick off, like I said, the 6-part stories for the next 20 years, I'll be greatly depressed.
We get a lot of B facts in this issue.
Yes, and one B, like, foreshadowing that, like, I was like, okay, this is definitely coming at some point.
And I'm excited for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the bit where, you know, we're reading the book, where Red B kind of puts everything together in regards to what the Brain has been up to over their 80-plus year career of making stuff.
Yes, he has many inventions under his
headbands. Maybe one that was even at the Alice Cooper concert this past weekend. Who knows?
There you go.
Yeah. So we get, like, that bit of a revelation, and you know, we're gonna get to the end of this, and we're getting stuff with the father figure in Red B that Peacemaker never had in his own father.
Yes.
Especially when there's the allusion to, at however old Peacemaker is supposed to be in this book, he doesn't know about the birds and the bees.
Yeah, he's not quite down with it. I'm still waiting for my lecture, but anyway.
Yeah. But there's a lot in this issue, and I just, you know, this is me. I want this. I would love for this book to go on forever. I just feel as though, you know, a couple things were rushed, but it's great. I loved it. I was smiling the whole time. I can't wait for the finale, and I wish there was no finale.
I agree. I can't hear him. I can't hear a certain voice when I'm listening, when I'm reading it. You know, there's a certain voice in my head, and it feels like the Peacemaker show. So, Yes, I can't wait for issue 6.
So that's what we read from this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to longboxheroes.com every Tuesday at noon Eastern time, we put up the poll post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week. Whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them mailed to your home, be forewarned, be forearmed, know what's coming out this week. Todd and I attempt to guess what the other is most looking forward to coming out this week. I'm currently in the lead over Todd with 2 correct guesses. I could have pivoted and said, anyway. But I go first, and I'm going to knee-jerk reaction and say the book you're most looking forward to coming out this week is Enfield Gang Massacre #2.
It is not. It is Batman and Robin #1 by Williamson.
That was my second guess.
Yeah, I enjoyed Enfield Gang Massacre, but I didn't love it, and I've been really liking Williamson's stuff. And I'm looking for. There's just something about that dynamic with those two characters that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at your list, and is the book you're looking forward to most Daredevil #1?
It is Daredevil #1. So it's a new creative team on the book, right?
Coming off that cliffhanger kind of ending
from Chip Zdarsky, and I'll say it's a writer I'm not familiar with, Saladin Ahmed, who has been pretty much the Miles Morales writer for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm interested to see anytime that there's a new creative team. I'm in and have been sold on Daredevil since 1996, outside of 2 glaring omissions. I've got the complete run of the book. I'm excited to see what the new creative team has in store for Matt Murdock and his rogues gallery, his what do they call it when it's not just the villains, his supporting cast, if you will.
Yeah, the supporting cast, yes.
Yeah, but the Batman and Robin will be interesting as well, since it'll be interesting to see where it kind of fits into continuity, since there's big to-do-ins in the main Batman stuff,
Yep.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, of course, be sure to check out everything else that Todd and I have been up to, whether it be past episodes of this show, past episodes of Longbox Heroes After Dark, and the current ongoing saga of Todd and Joe Have Issues, where we're going through the entire run of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, not just the 75 issues, because we're going to be talking about issues 67 and 68 here. We still got another, 3 months left to go?
Yep.
At least. So we got a lot to fill in there. So it's miniseries, it's one shot, it's things printed on the side of boxes for statues. We're getting into it all, and this is the part of the show where I turn things over to Todd, and I chime in from here every now and then. But
yes,
I got a feeling where we're going to go with a lot of this.
Yep. So we start with issue 67. Obviously, as I always say, Neil Gaiman writer, art by Mark Hempel. Corinthian is returning to the Dreaming, and he has Daniel with him because that was his thing, and he runs into Kane, and Kane basically fills the Corinthian in on everything that has been happening, and he's like, oh, okay, and Corinthian says, Matthew the Raven kind of abandoned me, and boy, am I going to deal with him when I run into him, and that's not too ominous, you know what I mean? So he's like, oh, ravens. Kane is and he ends up telling him a secret about ravens, how they kind of created the world in this fable kind of a thing. And Corinthian's like, wait a minute, secrets, aren't they Abel's deal and yours are mysteries? Why are you telling secrets? And where's your brother? And they do a cool shot of Kane where he looks none too happy because obviously the Furies have killed Abel by this point. So they end up setting off to go to the castle for refuge. And while they're doing all this, they're talking. They get there, and the gatekeepers basically say that are left the 3 of you, you can, or the 4 of you can come in. And Corinthians 4. There's only 3 of us, and that's when we find out that that Kane can say we because he has a Goldie in his pocket, Joe. Where he's and I was I thought that was a really nice thing because as the murderous freak that Kane is, him saving Goldie, which Abel loved, was a nice little touch. You know what I mean? So we get to Nuala, who's talking with Morpheus, and he basically fills her in, because he kind of hinted that things are bad about what's going on with the Kindly Ones, and they're after him for killing his son. And she kind of says, when he gives her the whole Iggy, and she's like, you want them to punish you, don't you? And he gives no answer. There's kind of that look that Morpheus always kind of gives people when he doesn't want to breach a subject. And he begins to like talk about his imprisonment, like for 80 years, and that in the end he told Ishtar that he hadn't changed, but he thinks he kind of lied to her, which is kind of a running thing through it. Like when he saw destruction, everybody kind of sees it on him, could smell it dripping off him that he's not the man that he once was. And he's like, all right, this is all gone.
Not to interrupt you. He kind of goes off into a soliloquy about, when he was held captive. And then he says, I told Ishtar, which again is, Ishtar is when they were going looking for
destruction.
She was the dancer. I told Ishtar that she was wrong, that I was not changed, that I did not change. But in truth, I think I lied to her. So again, he's not fully admitting that he changed.
But he thinks it.
Yes. And that's like a huge step for Morpheus to take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she ends up like, well, like, what will you do? And he's like, I shall return to my realm and I shall do what I have to. And he's like, oh, by the way, that boon, I owe you a boon. And he asked, what do you want? She says she wanted him to love her. And he's like, but basically he says, like, that's not a gift you can give. And I like her answer. She's like, well, I gave my love to you all those years ago. And he's kind of like, you did? Like in a kind of like, oh shucks kind of moment. And he's like, well, I can't give you my love.
Right. Well, and again, just to kind of interject, and again, we're going to do a lot of reading here as we get to the end of this. Mm-hmm. When Nuala says, I gave you my love, I gave all my love to you years ago. And Morpheus says, did you? I did not realize. And a pause on reflection. While I cannot give you the thing itself, I can give you a dream of my love. And she says, I already have that.
Yep. And
those panels, that discussion, shaped so much of a teenage me to this day.
Yep. So good. And along the way, she kind of tells him, like, couldn't you just run? You know what I mean? I kind of got out of there. He's like, they would follow me because she wanted to go off and be with them. So I always found that, like, that's kind of cool. So Rose goes to visit Zelda because she's back from England, and she goes to hospice, and she finds out that Zelda died while Rose was in England. And they do this great bit where Rose discusses getting someone's affairs in order that has passed away. That was a scene that kind of fell on deaf ears in 1990s for, 20-year-old Todd, but rereading it as 50-year-old Todd, Joe, is a complete change where she ends up basically like discussing, like she was hoping for miracle cures, but there was no miracles, no magic, no dreams. In the end, it's just pain and death and visa slips because you have to pay for like all the funeral and stuff. And I'm like, that is one of the greatest descriptions I have ever heard of being left behind after someone has passed. You know what I mean? Just so good.
And I'll throw this in, Todd. I'm old enough to remember when places did not have a machine that would run your credit card. Mm-hmm. They had like this little, like, almost like a mimeograph thing.
The Knuckle Buster.
Yeah. I didn't know that's what I don't think that was the industry term for it, right?
Right. It was the thing you put it in, you would slide it. It had a handle and you slid it across.
Yes.
Every person that I knew in retail called that the Knuckle Buster because you would occasionally scrape your knuckles trying to do it.
Because what you would need to, you would fill out the form of how much you were paying. You would sign it. They would lay your card down in like the little plate, put the piece of paper over it, run the thing over it to like do the mimeograph of your card number. Right. And then they would send that out to like their billing, to their bank, to the credit card. So like you would have something that you would pay with your credit card and it wouldn't hit the card for like days.
Yep. And that's how like a lot of like stealing money from it because you wouldn't know.
Right.
And that's why credit cards kids back in the day had raised numbers on them like Braille. Because when you needed to go over that to mimeograph on the the sheets and everything. I definitely remember all that. So she's kind of like messed up. Rose is messed up as she's leaving, and she's carrying the gifts that she brought for Zelda. And I do like that she comes out of the hospice and goes past the alleyway that she walked past Lyta before, like many issues ago. So I dig all that kind of stuff. And she ends up finding the old man, who's the homeless man who's been running through a lot of these issues. And she's like, oh, do you want this? I got like chocolates and flowers. He's like, and she gives them to him. It's the chocolates that he's really into. And that's when we find out Barnabas, the talking dog that Delirium is looking for, has been with this old man the whole time. And I thought that was really cool.
Now, when we saw the old man earlier in previous issues, it was kind of intimated that, like, they don't come right out and say it, but they give us some clues that maybe he might be one of those folks that have been alive for a very long time, like a Hobgolding. And do you think maybe Barnabas was attracted, or vice versa? Just the way that everything is connected in the Sandman mythos?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're back in the dreaming, and Corinthian and Lucian and Kane are, sitting around watching Daniel, and they're discussing if Morpheus will be back because he's been summoned away, or he's left and they don't know where he went. And they basically have a big discussion about, like, what's going to happen? Is he coming back? And they're like, yeah, he is. He even came back last time. But then they go into, like, what happened to the realm, how it fell into disarray with all that. And the Corinthians, like, yeah, I kind of remember that. And Lucian's talking about his memories and everything like that. He's like, you're kind of remembering the old Corinthian. And they're like, oh, well, what about Daniel? Like, he's just a kid here with, like, everything that's going on. And they're like, let's find him something to play with. And they're like, dreaming isn't like someplace you can just grab things. And, we're in the throne room kind of. And they're like, let's just give him this. And they give him this big orb, and it flashes and everything goes white. And they're like, let's find him something else to play with, kind of a deal. And I thought that was a really cool shot. We cut to Destiny in his garden with multiple versions of Destiny walking around, and they're each talking to each other. And the gist of it is that certain events that are happening now will bring about the reality storm, which was in World's End and everything like that. So, whatever it is now is happening is what kickstarted all that. And Sandman is coming back to the dreaming, and he's taking like a coach and this and that, and he ends up on a train. And the very interesting thing is, if you look at the outfit that Morpheus is wearing, do you remember the story in World's End where the guy falls asleep and the city's asleep, and that's the whole story? He thinks like the city is a dream, and he meets Morpheus on the train and asks him what's going on, and Morpheus doesn't say anything to him. That's the train, and that's the exact outfit from issue 54 or wherever it was around. So I like when stuff kind of plays into all that.
Nice.
Yeah, that is so cool. So he gets back to the dreaming, and he greets everyone, but he's especially interested in Daniel. And, Kane's like, well, what about my brother? You owe me. And, Kane's getting intense, but Morpheus is like, not now. And even Kane, who can be a murderer like crazy man, he's like, I'm not getting on Morpheus's wrong side. So the Furies show up at this point, the three of them as it, and they basically, get up in his face, and he stands up to them, but they end up whipping him in the face with that scorpion whip and leave a big scar. And that's a really cool shot with Morpheus, because he's the black and white that is, we know, and then you have that red bit dripping down his face, and he's like, you dare, kind of a deal. And things kind of go black. And that's when Lyta, who is bonded with the Furies, notices that Daniel is there. And she's like, we don't have to do this anymore. My son's alive. And they're like, no. Like, that's not what we do. We're not about, he's not even alive anymore. She's like, but he's right there. We have to rescue him. And she's like, the Furies are like, no, we're not in the rescue business. We're in the revenge business. And I just want to kind of throw in here real quick. Of course, we talked last week in regards to when we see the text for the Furies, the monologue, the inner dialogue, whatever, it has like that red around the edges of them. border, yes.
Right, and Lyda, of course, is just like a normal word box or whatever it is. So obviously that conversation happens there, and then we go to whatever their realm is. And I feel as though this is the first time that we're getting a chance to see the Furies for who and what they are, which is just ugly, horrible monsters. And amongst it all, here's Lyda in this suit of armor, where this is the whole thing of she sees herself on a courageous quest as the hero of the story to save her son from the evil Morpheus Sandman who made these threats to her all these years ago. But when you look at who she is paired up with and who she is thrown in with, obviously, like, she doesn't come to this realization at this point, but I think this is set up in a way for us to be like, this is the moment where Lyda should understand that she's wrong in what she's done to get to this point. Now, obviously, her son was kidnapped and killed and everything else that's going to happen. But I definitely feel as though this is the point where we're supposed to, like, see that Lyda made a mistake.
Yes. And I will say, as you're saying these horrible things, I feel like, but they're only horrible in this version of the Three Witches, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Like, when they're the Fates, they're not horrible. They're just what their job is. But as the Furies, definitely drawn as, horrible looking, because that's what they're supposed to represent. And they end up saying about the revenge thing, like, we're revenge. We're not, it's not about your son. It's about the son he killed. And we're doing this because we hated his son. And she's like, well, why? And because he made us cry. And that all goes all the way back to the Orpheus one-shot special, where he went down to sing for his wife, and they ended up crying. And that's like their bit of revenge, all that, long ago. So Lucian comes to Morpheus and asks him, like, hey, are you going to keep that scar? And he ends up talking about how Eleanor, who was one of the women he dated from Game of You, who, like, he set her essence free. She's like, she predicted that I would get a scar, like the one she had on her face and the one that I gave her and left on her heart. So I'm thinking, what I might do with it. And if you go back to Game of You, she does have a scar on her face. And back then I was kind of the mind, like, do I mention it or bring it up? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it was so long ago, I didn't kind of mention it. So Lucian basically says, what are you going to do? And Morpheus kind of gives him the Iggy, where he's like, I'll do whatever I can, and I'll do whatever I must. And at this point, as you're reading it, in your mind, you don't know all the rules, but you don't feel with everything that they say to him that he has a lot of options. You know what I mean? So very, very dreary, like that kind of sentence to him. He says, but first he has to talk to Daniel, and he says, I want you to bring him and the Eagle Stone to me. And he's like, the Eagle Stone? You mean the Emerald? And he's like, yes. Bring it to me. And then he ends up, reliving various sentences throughout the issue and in the past. And he's like,
I need to interject. This is my part that I requested.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know where you wanted to go.
As I hold up my hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
He reminisces to the part where Nuala tells him what he could do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in that last page, it's a full, it's not a full page shot. It's like a 2/3 page shot of Morpheus standing in that archway holding the helm. And it says this, Todd. Rules and responsibility. These are the ties that bind us. We do what we do because of who we are. If we did otherwise, we would not be ourselves. I will do what I have to do, and I will do what I must. And I know this is not the first time that these words have appeared in a Sandman comic, but the fact that they're back again, I love these phraseology, because the first, and again, this verbiage was ripped off word for word, line for line for a sad Scotty Flamingo ECW promo.
Of course it was.
So there's so much of Morpheus, there's so much of Sandman that I hear in what would be Morpheus's voice, but whenever this comes up, I hear it in Raven's voice. And that's me bringing up my wrestling. Everything's tied together.
Right.
To be continued.
And the thing that I kind of want to mention about this last shot, which is it takes you all the way back to the battle where he's going to fight D and, to get back his ruby.
Yeah.
And it's the exact shot. And he's done it before where he's standing in the archway and he has the cloak with the flames and he's holding the helm. And I'm like, Joe, this is going to be a battle for his life. And that's all I'll say.
Yep.
So we ready for issue 68?
Yeah, and hey, I just want to throw out real quick, issue 67, issue 68, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get those opening panels where previously we had seen that tie, the line, the cord, the string, and 2 issues ago that line was cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we get the first panel from issue 67 where the Corinthian says, "Who's there?" And then we have the first panel for issue 68 where Matthew says, "Still here then." I feel as though, because from the beginnings when Neil was laying that sort of stuff out, like how a story never goes where you think it's going to go and things are going to kind of go along, where these are Neil putting things in of like saying like, "Hey, are you still hanging with us? We're you're still here. We're almost done," sort of stuff, right?
Right.
Kind of asking the readers, because I'm sure we talk about it in previewing the past. During this time, there is a bigger push with Vertigo. Right around the time that these issues come out, we get the big push of Death Month, where there's a lot of like Death, Sandman related stuff that's being solicited, put out, and so forth. So one would have to think that there is an uptick in readership that they're seeing, and this is Neil's way of kind of like acknowledging that, maybe. But maybe
right.
I'm reading too much into all this.
Maybe that one that's above my pay grade. So
all right.
So the issue starts. Mark Hempel art again, and like you said, Matthew shows up, and he basically says, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, I'm about to confront the Furies, and while I'm doing so, I've spoken to Daniel." So that happened off camera, and I'm contemplating the Emerald kind of a deal. And, by the way, the Corinthian is planning on killing you because you deserted him. He's like, "What? I was pulled away. That's not my fault. Could he kill me?" He's like, not permanently. But he's like, "Can you talk to him?" He's like, "I'll try." And basically, there's a cool shot of Morpheus, because every time we see him, he's always been white and black with occasionally red. Now the green on his face is very intense and different looking to me. And he's contemplating the emerald and, like kind of a penny for your thoughts. And he's like, "You have no pennies," and they go down the list and he talks about how a gem has facets and how you look at it. Like one thing can be different things depending on how you kind of hold it. And I think there's deeper meaning there, especially where we're going. And in the end, Matthew's like, "What's your point?" And he's like, I have no point, but he kind of does.
He just says, save for the jewel, the facets, the light. We see an aspect of the whole, but the facet is not the jewel.
Mm-hmm.
So again, he just kind of, reiterating the way that we look at things is just from different angles and the way that we perceive things and so forth. And as Morpheus is getting ready to leave, he gives the emerald to Daniel.
Right.
Where we just kind of established in the previous issue where they give him like that shining, that glass orb or globe or whatever it is, and things, change almost immediately. Again, I would assume that's something that Morpheus had kept, stowed away, one of the many dream stones that he created, and he gives it to Daniel. Again,
mm-hmm. Yep.
Big things are going to happen here shortly.
Yeah, and I do like, did you notice the toys that Daniel was playing with?
Yes, they're all the toys that Barbie played with.
Yes,
her friends. Yes.
I mean, it all comes around, Joe. It all comes around. And he's like, so basically, Matthew says, "Well, why don't you just poof them out of existence? You're one of the most powerful." He's like, even the gods, even us, even though, we're above them, like we have our rules, like he always says. And, I've spoken to the kid, and now I'm going. I bid you farewell. I shall not forget you. And does his magic, and he's standing there, and Matthew's still there. And he's like, I sent you away. He's like, that don't work. We've tried this before. And I was able to stay. He's like, you don't think you're coming back? He's like, no, I don't. And Matthew's like, if I go, am I coming back? And he's like, probably not. And then I like the thing where he's like, a penny for your thoughts, which like Raven, Matthew did. And he's like, what am I going to do with a penny? And he says, you know what? I was thinking about duty and second chances. Well, what are we going to do? Let's go knock him dead, boss, which is, you're like, ooh. So he ends up, he's heading off to the Furies. So now as this book goes on, it's going to jump off like what's going on in the world. So I'm just going to go through the characters that we hit. So Delirium ends up who's looking for Barnabas, and she goes to Lux on her trail, and she runs into to Mizikine, and I still don't like the whole she's missing a mouth, so Neil writes her. That's one of the few nitpicks I ever have about this book, is I have to figure out what she says, but usually from the dialogue you can figure it out. And Lucifer says, let her in, and they end up talking. And I do like that Lucifer's talking about his brother, Delirium's brother, and he's like, I told him years ago that he should leave. Like when I left Hell, I tried to prompt him, but because he gave me the impetus to leave, and I tried to return the favor. And you don't have to stay anywhere forever. And Delirium says, like, I leave places. He's like, I'm sure you do, but she says, but Dream doesn't. I don't think he can. And he's like, I swore to destroy him. He's like, why? And I like that, like the way Lucifer remembers it, because he said something clever once. It's not important, but now I feel sorry for him. And she's like, what should I do? He's like, nothing you can do, honey. Like, go find your dog, so I kind of feel sorry, but I also, I wish I was Delirium, because I don't see what's coming. You know what I mean? Like, she's kind of oblivious at times. So we get Rose, who goes to see Vixen, who was in one of the past issues on TV, that Rose is like, I do not like that person. Well, we find out that it's Hal under a new persona, who's like selling CDs and everything like that. And she comes to tell her that Zelda is dead. It comes to tell Hal that Zelda is dead. And he's like, but you had a falling out, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't care. I'm not going to this wedding. He's like, but me and you, we were it. And he's like, I'm still not going. And she kind of like tells him off and leaves.
So I just have to throw in there. Yeah. So she's just like, hey, listen, come to Zelda's funeral. You were only the one last people. And, Hal's new persona, whatever that character is, and it's him in drag doing like TV shows. I think it's supposed to be like a nod to like a Dame Edna type character, right? Mm-hmm. But there's specifically a piece in their conversation where Hal is changing back into like jeans and a t-shirt, right?
Right.
And there's a panel where he's got the wig, he's got like the bald cap on, he just has the jeans on, and you could see his back. That is almost exactly the same panel as from the beginning of the Kindly Ones with Lucifer.
Yep, definitely, because it almost looks like the shoulder blades are his wings cut off.
Yes.
Which is a nice, homage.
And very intentional there, yes.
Yeah. So now we're in Fairy, and Nuala is very sad, because it's going on. And that little imp fairy comes and tells her the rest of his poem. And in essence, it's about choosing, kind of a deal. And she says, Clerican, I know it's you. And he's like, why? And all the clues are there. You're so egotistical that, I could see that it's you writing it, and then you want the adulation for what you say. And I just kind of notice it. And she's like, and she says, well, what's the matter? He goes, because my Lord Morpheus is in trouble. He says, Lord Shaper is in dire need, and he doesn't love me. And he's like, would it be better if he was in dire need and he did love you? Which is two quotes that have stuck with me since I read them. And I always take that back. Like, that is true. What would you rather, him love you and you go down together kind of a thing? I don't know. That's really cool. But she ends up saying, like, you put the glamour on me to save me from banishment. Could you take it off? I don't like this. And she's like, I did it to save you. And he's like, but I want my true shape for my journey. He's like, journey's like you said, your silly poem, we are what we choose to be. And I choose to leave. Give me my face back. So, Newell is standing up for herself in Fairy. And finally we get Corinthian guarding Daniel and the little emerald in the throne room, and Death shows up, and Corinthian stands off. He's like, you got to get through me. And he's like, I'm fine with you taking me. He's like, I'm not here for the two of you. Where's my brother? And Lucian comes in, and, he's with the ladies, the Furies, and they discuss books, because last time Death saw Lucian, it's books, and Lucian, being unnerved, just starts babbling, which I can totally understand. And she's like, not now, this isn't the time. He's like, okay. She's like, well, I can wait for him to come back. So obviously we're back to Morpheus and Matthew going to fight them. And he's talking about, like, where we're going, like, in the dreaming. And it's like, okay, this is it. And he's like, I just want to tell you, it was good being your Raven. It was good being your friend. And once again, Morpheus, who's king of the emotions, Joe, he's like, friend? He's like, I don't know, whatever. And he's like, ladies, let's do this. This is the time. This is the place. And they're just waiting on them. And this is when Matthew asks more about, the Ravens, because he's like, he'll know. He's like, what happens to him? He's like, like kind of what happened to some of them. One of them went away. One of them was returned to humanity. And one of them was Lucian. And Lucian, he was the first Raven. Yep. And he's like, wow, he said he didn't remember his early days. That's kind of cool. We find out that's, so you could stay in the dreaming after your Raven, your tour of duty, if you will. He's like, well, what about me? And that's when the Furies show up. And they basically, come after him. They say, take your stance. He's like, I'll fight you. Take your stance. We're going to take your world bit by bit, shred by shred. Your son's blood is on your hand. And, there's nothing you can do. And he's like, so you'll, not be satisfied with anything less. And Matthew's like, less than what? And I like that every time Matthew chimes in, Morpheus is like, hush, like this is beyond your pay grade. He's like, oh, okay. I have no alternative. I see. He's like, what you're doing is going to have repercussions. And they're like, doesn't scare us. He's like, don't care. Just want to say. And then he says, like, he starts taking off his helm. He's like, we make choices. No one else can live our lives for us. And we must confront and accept these consequences of our actions, which is kind of a thing that has been said, like even Destiny said to him over the course. And him taking off the helm, like, that's not a good sign for battle. And Matthew's like, you're nuts. He's like, listen, I have a task for you. And he's like, I'm staying with you. And he's like, and these words give me chills. He's like, this will be the last thing I will ever ask of you. Will you deny it? And he's like, what do you need? He's like, here, take these. And he gives him the pouch and the helm. He's like, take them back to my throne room. My sister will be there for me. He's like, they're kind of big. And he shrinks them down, which is kind of cool. And Morpheus says, take them. And Matthew says, please? And he's like, what? I'm sorry? He's like, take them, please? And he's like, I apologize. Will you take them, please? Sure, no problem. He's like, and wait with them. He's like, I don't get to come back. He's like, no, afraid not. I will see you then when you come back to the castle. I'll wait for you there. And Morpheus only answers with goodbye. And he ends up like throwing his cloak into the like chasm, and he's standing there. And Joe, in that second to last panel, the one that goes across the top, he almost looks content, doesn't he? And Matthew gets back to the throne, and he lands, and he sees Death, and he says, "He said you'd be here. He wants you to go to him." I don't think that's a good sign either, Joe. Oh, my heart is in my throat right now.
So, obviously, as big as that all is, Matthew being the one to get Morpheus to finally say please.
Yep.
And thank you, and show a shred of humanity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I know we say this and I run into the ground, but Neil does it. How far has Morpheus changed, Joe? So much. And it seems small, but like they establish it all through the book. Like these minute are huge for him. He was carved in stone to what he was. I respect this book so much, Joe. And I don't know if I've said it before. Sandman's pretty good. Oh, love it.
It's pretty good.
Yep.
But obviously, like even further still, as he gives the bag of sand, he gives the helm to Matthew to take back, and then he's just standing there, and he takes, the cloak off, he takes the gloves off, he takes the shirt off, and he's just standing there in the rain, as vulnerable as he possibly can be, and yeah. He summons death to him.
But that, Joe, that's just for a talk. Everything's going to be okay. Tell me everything's going to be okay, Joe.
That line in Reservoir Dogs where Harvey Keitel is driving and Tim Roth has been shot in the gut. And I can't say it here because he swears with it. Tim Roth is hyperventilating. He's obviously he's been shot in the gut. And Harvey Keitel's trying to calm him down, and then he just keeps trying to rhythmically getting him to say, "You're going to be okay. Say the words. You're going to be okay, Todd." It's not going to be okay.
I'm going to need a minute.
Ugh. All right. Okay. So while you get your minute there, next week we're going to be reading issues 69 and 70. And again, just unfortunately the way that things worked out, if you're reading this in single issues, no worries. If you're reading this in any non-oversized hardcover, extended edition, if you're just reading these like in the normal trades, that's the last issue, 69, of the kindly ones, and issue 70 is the first issue of The Wake, which is the final trade paperback of the main 75-issue story arc.
That's right. Next week, we begin to take it home, Joe, on the main series.
Yeah, on the main series, but we still got a lot more ground to cover.
Right.
I think we'll have to do like a post-coda, like once we're done, we get to issue 75, just to kind of reflect on everything that we've done up to this point,
Yeah, because that was pretty much I always felt Neil could go on, but that was pretty much it. Like that's the heart of Sandman, 1 to 75, and that special, and the Death Mini.
Yeah,
and all the other stuff that we did. It was all the heart.
Well, we talked before when we were doing Previewing the Past, where they interviewed Neil about all this, and he says, that he had an idea of where like he could have ended it like around issue 25 if he needed to.
Yep,
he had an idea of where he could end it around like issue 50 if he needed it to,
He even said, I didn't think I was going to get to 12, so I had a way out, or I thought I would only get a year, so at 8, I was like, you get the Death issue, and those last 4 issues, I would set up where we were going, be a hard out, and then hope that this little book caught traction, that DC would let me answer all the questions in a miniseries afterwards. Can you believe that in 1980, whatever, that he, looking back, that it was like, oh, this book would have ended and maybe they would have let me answer some questions. Wow.
Maybe. Mm-hmm. Or he's the linchpin. He's what carries the entirety of that universe, Yep.
Yeah. I still stand by that. The Reality Storm was Neil trying to give the rub that, hey, Sandman's responsible for all crises. You know what I mean?
Right.
And everyone, and I'm like, as I always say, I'll give him credit for every crisis from here on out. Joke. Anyway.
That's why I'm shocked we didn't get anything in Night Terrors with it. You know, I know it's been a long time, but, you know, they were attempting to make us believe that something was going to happen, you know?
I'll say this. While Neil is still breathing, they will never try to upset him, because all they have to do is write a check that he can find time to cash and write a story that will make money and be in reprint forever. So, like, if they get somebody to swoop in and start tweaking the Sandman stuff, and he's like, all right, I'm done. I'm like, I've written everything I need. They always want to leave that door open a crack to print some money. Look at Sandman, the Helm edition, where there's going to be a small story. I'm buying it. You know what I mean? And that will be reprinted again. And then we have to figure out if we have to do a coda after the year is over and do a special episode on the last story or whatever. We're gonna see where we're gonna fit that in. But
well, none of them have, I know they were. Didn't we talk that there was a version that was for sale at San Diego Comic-Con?
Oh yeah, we never looked for that. Yeah,
I have a saved search, Todd. Nothing's come up yet.
Okay.
I have a saved search and an alert for it as well. So
because we have to discuss whether or not that goes on the what I'm looking forward, because that's the layup of what I'm looking forward to next week. But if it has to be saved till the end of Sandman, it can't go into the running. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think it has to be saved to the end of Sandman, Todd.
Yes, because we're reading it in chronological order of how they came out. So
exactly.
All right, we'll discuss all this off mic. We want to make this a short show, Joe.
Oh, it's close.
Gotcha.
So, hey, Todd, we had an art attack this week, did we not?
Yeah. Dan from Comic Consigliere. For Todd's art attack this year at Baltimore Comic-Con, the yearbook that focused on the 40th anniversary of First Comics included prints if you got at least 20 signatures, and there was a quite array of talent, including David Mack, Kevin Maguire, and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Those are all gorgeous. The prints are beautiful. I love the Kevin Maguire. Obviously, anytime he does an homage of his elevator shot from Justice League #1, I love it. And I'm still sad that I didn't go to Baltimore this year. And I do love the yearbooks that they do every year, which they get all the people that are there to like contribute. And then obviously they give you the sheet. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like it has all the page names that are in there, and you can get them to sign the page. And if you get the goal is to get them all. But if you get X amount, they'll give you the set of prints that come with the book. So people try. Love it. Think it's one of the coolest things that's unique to Baltimore Comic-Con.
I'm shocked that no one else has tried to emulate that or steal that.
Ape it, yeah.
And I'm kind of glad that no one has tried.
I totally agree.
Yeah. But yeah, so thanks, Dan, for sharing that stuff with us. Glad you had a good time in Baltimore. I also tipped us off for next year. The dates are the 22nd or the 20th, 22nd. And I not that you would have known this last week, Todd, of course, but I understand that Bruce Springsteen was sick and they had to postpone the concert last weekend.
I think they canceled the rest of his tour. They told me it's with rumors that he might be done touring forever, but I don't want to, say that, but that's the scuttlebutt that's out there.
Listen, I know a guy that loves Bruce Springsteen more than he loves life itself, and when I see him on Saturday, I'll be sure to ask him, because if anyone knows, it's him.
I wonder if the guy from the Alice Cooper concert will show up at the Bruce Springsteen one.
No, well, okay, I was going to say he ain't showing up this Saturday. He will not be welcome. I can assure you that.
Gotcha.
And again, I would be also remiss, we did plug to let everyone know that the signups was there for Pigskin Pick'ems. The group is locked at 45 folks. Thank you, everyone, for signing up. Don't forget to do your picks, of course. I think you have to have them in like right before kickoff of whatever the game is. And there's the Thursday game. It's always good to get them in. And I know Todd does a good job of trying to send out that reminder to folks. So keep your eye on social media for that sort of stuff as well. And listen. I'm not going to come on here and start doing some sort of braggadocious thing in week one, okay?
Right. Who would do something like that?
But I do want to say, I was inundated with just as many texts as I got about something that we're going to talk about at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
That the night game had not even started yet, and the afternoon games weren't even over yet. It was third quarter with minutes left to play, and I'm getting people accusing me of somehow rigging my picks.
You can't. Listen, you can rig a draft order. You can't rig the pigskin pick'ems.
Right, there's no spread, there's no nothing like that. It's just straight, who do you think's going to win? And I'm tied for second at this point?
Yes.
All right.
You had a good run. We'll see how it goes. You got lucky, son. You got lucky. You're not destined to win the way the Raiders are after the first week. You just got luck. You are the New York Jets after losing Aaron Rodgers. You got lucky, son.
If I knew what any of that meant, Todd.
I'll explain it all, and you'll be riveted after the show.
So I will just say this. My picks were locked in over a month ago. I didn't touch them. I didn't look at them. I didn't do nothing. After I saw people talking this past weekend, did I think about going in and changing all the times that I picked the Giants to win to not having the Giants win? Yes, I did. But that would then foul up the integrity of the bit that I put my picks in and never look at them ever again.
The Giants stunk on ice. Oof.
Yeah, all the Giants fans that I'm friends with, and there's quite a bit, were hurting this weekend. Hurting.
Yeah, they weren't on it, but as I say, they weren't playing football. They were out there killing grass.
But listen, none of this matters because the Raiders are in first in their division, right?
As I always say, what's silver and black and first in their division? The Raiders.
Oh, I was going to say the Spurs, but...
Right, I don't know who they are. That sounds like somebody who's wearing chaps.
No, San Antonio Spurs in the NBA. I think their colors are silver and black.
Is that the thing where you throw the ball in the peach basket?
Yes.
Okay.
So, like I said, don't forget, if you're in, you're in. Don't forget to do your picks. The goal is to beat me.
Yes. Who doesn't want to beat Joe?
That's right. And far be it from me not to give credit where credit is due. I'm tied with Fuad Ramses of the great film Blood Freak. And I don't know who hashtag boycott Big Pumpkin is. I assume that's one of Todd's many burner accounts that he has in here.
Wait a minute. I have 0 burner accounts other than Todd's Art Attack, which I straight up say is me.
Uh-huh.
I don't know of any other accounts that you can link to me other than my Sketchy Doug-like account, which I tell no one about. The other ones are all, just those two and Longbox Heroes.
Do I have to expose your business on the air?
What? Name one other one. I don't know what you're talking about.
Executions?
You use words. What?
Executions?
That's another one that's out there, and that was for only one thing, counting the deaths that Jonah Hex had in the DC universe, and it has not tweeted a thing since.
And to stuff the ballot box on the worst villain poll from last year. I'm well aware.
Know what you're talking about. Mr. Back when you were the Carson copter and you had the sign into that, don't tell me you didn't rig a few things in your day. But I never did. I stand above doing that kind of stuff.
And I always say, I'm when it comes to a poll that I am directly involved in, I respect the integrity of said poll, and I only will tweet from one of the accounts that I have access to, which is my main account. There are accounts that multiple people have access to. You mentioned the Longbox Heroes account, the At Odds with Wrestling account. There's multiple people that have access to those accounts. I will not use those accounts to vote in any polls that, like I said, directly affect me or any of the shows. I also won't use any of the... And I'm freely admit, I say all the things that I have access to. My own account, Longbox Heroes, At Odds with Wrestling, soon-to-be-named Network One, April's, and Words. Those are the only ones I have. No other ones out there, and I don't use them to pad any polls.
I don't use them to pad any polls that we do.
Okay.
Did I use them to bring down Jeff Jarrett? Maybe.
Oh, you see?
That's different. That's your poll, not ours.
Well, listen, you threw your lot in with Adam, and how did that work out for you?
Well, he used all his burners, I think, on the villains rogue, so that worked.
Well, that's expected of him.
Exactly. But I do not like you accusing me of tactics like that.
Okay.
That hurts, Joe. This might be... You're lucky we have 3 more months to Sandman.
Yeah.
Or this podcast would be over.
I'm just saying, when I look at the list of the number of burners, when you have more burners than young Ed does, maybe you might have an issue. All right. Hey, ESPN Pigskin Pick'ems. Thanks, everyone, for checking those out and putting your picks in and everything else like that. We hit Todd's Art Attack, so now I guess it's time to talk about the latest episode of Ahsoka.
Sure, why not?
So again, a little bit lighter of an episode, I think. You know, there was a couple big plot things that do happen in this episode, but I have to address some corrections and omissions, I guess.
Okay.
So after our episode went live last week, to say that I was inundated by multiple people contacting me to tell me how wrong I am and how much I screwed up the timeline of Star Wars.
Yep.
So, in my mind, Ahsoka comes from the cartoon Clone Wars. The Clone Wars takes place in between episodes 2 and 3 of the prequels, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I was not aware of, that there was a sequel cartoon to Clone Wars called Rebels, which takes place more during... You know, the real Star Wars movies, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, specifically after Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
I just assumed everything took place during, like, in between episodes 2 and 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, last week I'm like, oh, well, Anakin hasn't turned yet. He's not Darth Vader just yet. People were like, oh my God, Joe, you're so stupid. And I will say this, yes, but that's unrelated to me not understanding the new funky timeline, where in between each set of prequels, 40 years take place in the Star Wars universe, where they cram in so much stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I haven't consumed all of the Star Wars media that's out there, which is still no excuse. As someone who speaks into a microphone and records it for people to listen to, I should have some sort of knowledge of the thing that I'm talking about. So I do apologize, and I do thank everyone who reached out to me to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to Star Wars.
Hold on, let me mark it on the calendar. September 12th, 2023, the first time Joe was wrong. Let's celebrate it every year.
Now, see, that's the thing, Todd. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. So
there you go.
It's a different thing. Right. So this episode is essentially Ahsoka and Sabine are trapped. Their ship's not working. They're on that planet. The evil folks, they're not Sith or whatever.
Right.
But Balin and his crew are kind of like stalking them, keep an eye on them, but not getting close enough. Ahsoka essentially says, like, listen, if we can't get the map, I'm just going to destroy it, essentially, so no one can get there. Yep. And even if that means we're not going to be able to save our friend, so be it. That's the risk I'm willing to take so that Thrawn does not come back into power.
Mm-hmm.
As Huyang is doing repairs outside of the ship, I love the bit with the droid jump scare and then the droid slugfest in this episode.
Yeah. One thing that I will say is, where have you seen another good droid like that stand up and fight back? I actually thought that was really cool, where he was holding his own because he trains the Jedis to fight.
Yeah.
So he has the ability. Like, I don't think droids can kill, but he's able to, like, defend himself. You know what I mean?
Right. So then we get, like, the double confrontation with Shin, who is, like, the blonde-haired, white-haired apprentice lady of Balin, And who is he's the guy in the mask that's with them?
It's made of gas. I don't understand.
Yeah. So we get the battle, and he gets run through with a lightsaber, much like Sabine did in episode 1, and she just need to get a little a little bandage on her tum-tum, and she was fine. But this guy gets run through, but they don't just stick it in him; they give him the swipe with it too. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then he's apparently green mist inside of his costume.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he's going to be one that's going to be tough to kill. I can't think of the guy from Hellboy. You remember? He was the one in the costume that was like a mist or whatever.
Abe Sapien, you're thinking of, yes?
Yeah, Abe's. But I think that's it's going to be. He's able to jump from body to body. He's got some sort of robot body that he can use. So they're going to have to do something different to kill him.
And I'm sure he showed up in Clone Wars or Rebels, and I don't know what his deal is, right?
There's a part of me that thinks somehow he's the reincarnation for the 19th time of Darth Maul.
Okay.
I don't know, but I have no proof on that. So
I definitely think a lot of these new characters that get added into stuff like this, in any sort of Star Wars media, it's them trying to we're going to make the next Darth Maul.
Right, I'm with you. And if Joe's wrong, everybody attack him, please.
Thank you. That's just my opinion. I have wrong opinions all the time. So then Ahsoka has the battle with Baylan. Baylan gets the advantage on her, and that's when Sabine shows up. And Baylan is like, listen, if you join up with us, or if you surrender, I will take you to your friend. And that's the promise that I'm making to you. And the one thing that I thought was so funny is Sabine has the map in her hand, and she's holding the gun to the map, and the map is like a ball, looks like if you remember the thermal detonator thing that Bosk had, or Bosch when Leia was in disguise in Return of the Jedi. Yep. Essentially a silver ball. She has it in her hand, and then she has her laser pistol up against the thing, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say she decides to call Baylan's bluff and shoot a blaster directly into her hand while holding a reflective ball close to her face. How do you think that's going to work out for Sabine?
Well, you know what? I know you're joking around a little bit and serious, but here's what I'll say. It comes down to when Ahsoka, they had to stop the map because it was about to download so they can have the coordinates, and she grabs it and burns her hand. She was willing to sacrifice her hand to stop Thrawn, because we don't need a new heir to the Empire. Wink into the camera. So that's when I was like, yes, Sabine, if you have to shoot your hand, you're saving the universe, you're saving the galaxy. But then once again, Sabine does she just makes all the wrong choices. And I was talking about this with somebody today. Well, I know in the end, because I don't know how this series is going to end, but they're going to go and they're going to get their friend back, and Thrawn's going to come back too. But in the end, they're going to stop things, and she's going to be like, "See, I did make the right decision because we got my friend back," and blah blah blah. But I'm like, really, we could have stopped this all. It could have literally been an episode and a half, and it would have been over. But I just was screaming when she handed over the ball again. I'm like, Ahsoka, you've chosen poorly. Get rid of your friend and fight this battle on your own.
Well, Ahsoka got kicked off the cliff by Baylan. Syndulla decided to disobey the New Republic order and take a bunch of her ships there. And I thought there was a great bit where she shows up and she's got 6 X-Wings with her,
Right.
And they notice that the warp ring, the hyperspace ring, is going to fire because they had to wait. They had to get the coordinates, but then they also had to wait for all 12 of the engines to fire up.
Mm-hmm.
And once they had the coordinates, and once all 12 engines were fired up, they're like, all right, we're going to hit hyperspace. There's 7 ships in our way. Oh, too bad. So sad. They're getting run over,
Right.
And I thought that was a cool moment. You never really saw stuff like that in a Star Wars movie or TV show. So I like little things like that. And a bunch of the people that came with Syndulla got wasted. They just got run through by a giant ship running through hyperspace.
But wasn't that a giant plot point in The Last Jedi, didn't they take out a Star Destroyer with a ship at hyperspace?
Right. Okay. So I think they they did it as though like they were a bullet shooting through a much larger ship.
Right.
But this is a much larger ship just wiping out much smaller ships.
Fair enough. I was taking it as you were saying we've never seen a ship at hyperspeed hit another ship. That's all. That's all. Yeah, wait, wasn't that in Last Jedi? But
no, this, like I said, this is the inverse of that. But I get where you're. Yeah.
Gotcha. Too bad they didn't take out Chopper.
Oh, Chopper's gonna be he's gonna be the one who saves the day in the end.
Yep.
And he's gonna have to save Ha-Young from like Silicious Crumb like eating his hat or something.
Right. And then at the end, Ahsoka, who fell off the mountain into the water, didn't die. She got caught by the metachlorines and meets Anakin in the sky.
I was gonna say that definitely feels like a CTE induced hallucination of Anakin Skywalker. Until
the Vader's theme plays, and I'm like, what's happening?
Uh-huh.
But I will say, I'm wondering if she's going to be able to Jedi teleport from galaxy to galaxy, because I wonder how she's going to get there. But I want to see what they do with Anakin and Vader, because they kind of lead you to believe it's like, oh, this is the Anakin who died, who turned good at the end. But there's also the Vader's theme, which is always one of the greatest villain themes in history. So I don't know. Just more mention of more metachlorians, please.
They didn't say metachlorians, but I get what you're saying.
I felt they were walking on a rainbow bridge of metachlorians.
Let's hope that that's what it is, but they actually never say the M word. How about that?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm enjoying this, but I definitely feel I don't like the fact that they're letting Sabine's character make so many bad choices.
You're preaching to the choir, and my other thing is coming off Andor. That's like, you know what I mean? That's my because Andor was the last one, right, of the TV shows?
Yes.
So that's like my high bar. And then this, which I'm, like I said, I'm not much of a Jedi guy. So I'm like, all right, it's fun. It's Star Wars. I'll watch it regardless, because, 4-year-old Todd has sweat equity in Star Wars. But I think coming off the last one is what really hurts it for me.
Right.
Anyway.
But I'm still here. I'm loving it. It's a fun show. I like Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it for everything, right? We covered everything. I checked off all the things on my notes that I had to talk about.
Yeah, I think we did well, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, thanks everyone for listening. This was episode 675 of Longbox Heroes. For Todd, this is Joe saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.